With all of the news that has come out recently and most sports leagues being suspended rather than canceled, the NCAA has canceled all of their winter and spring sports, and that means the 2020 NCAA Tournament will never be played. This sucks for so many reasons, and college basketball is my favorite sport, but I honestly was kind of falling out of love with it. But this news has completely rocked my world and has given me a new perspective on why I love college basketball so much. But anyway, I have been waiting to make this video because I couldn't really decide on whose bracket to use. I know ESPN, CBS, Fox Sports, and even Reddit have come up with a bracket because obviously we never got an official one this year. And I could come up with my own, but I decided not to. But I finally came to the conclusion that I wanted to use Joe Lunardi's bracket from ESPN because I think everyone knows him the best, and I liked how he had his laid out, and I thought it could have been the one that they actually used. So thank you, Joe Lunardi, for coming in clutch and providing us all light in what has been the weirdest end to a season we will ever experience. I'm going to fill out his bracket because that's really all we have left to do, and the best part is I get to decide who will win the tournament. And even though I really wanted to pick Mick Cronin and UCLA to win it all, I'm going to fill this out exactly how I would have if the games were played, so no funny business from me. So without further ado, here is how I thought the 2020 NCAA Tournament would have played out. But before I get into my bracket prediction, I have to thank Raycon for sponsoring this video. I've had a hard time getting earbuds to fit in my ears, and Raycons are honestly the best fitting earbuds I've tried out. I've gotten into running and they actually stay in my ears and they don't fall out, especially when I get sweaty. Raycon earbuds start at about half the price of the other premium wireless earbuds on the market, and the sound is really amazing like the other top audio brands you know about. Their latest model, the Everyday E25 earbuds, are their best ones yet, with 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a more compact design to give you a nice noise isolating fit. The company was co-founded by Ray J, and celebrities like Snoop Dogg and NBA champion J.R. Smith are obsessed with Raycons. Raycon offers their wireless earphones in a range of fun colors and patterns. They're super comfortable and come in a variety of fit options. It also comes in a compact carrying case that charges the earbuds 4 times on a single charge. And click the link in the description below to get 15% off your order. And I have to say a huge thank you to Raycon for sponsoring this, and let's get into who would have won the 2020 NCAA Tournament. So just like every year, let's start out with the first 4. I would have had North Carolina Central over Prairie View A&M. I would have had the Fighting Mick Cronins over NC State. I would have had Boston University over Robert Morris. And then I would have had Texas and Shaka Smart over Richmond. Moving on up, I would have had Kansas over Siena. I would have had Houston over Marquette, even though it would have been a tough because Marcus Howard could have led them, but Houston had a deep bench. I would have gone Liberty over Auburn because I really liked this Liberty team. They looked good last year, and I didn't really like Auburn at all this year. Thought they were kind of a fluke at times, so I would have gone with Liberty. Wisconsin finished the year super strong, so I would have gone with them over North Texas. East Tennessee State would have been everybody's upset pick, and it would have been hard to pick them because Luka Garza was so good at Iowa this year, but I still would have done it. I'd have gone with East Tennessee State. Duke over Belmont would have been a tough because I like this Belmont team, but obviously it would have been hard to go against Duke, so I'd have gone with them. Providence finished the year so strong. Arizona State looked really good at times, but I would have gone with Providence. Kentucky over North Dakota State would have been tough, but I would have gone with the Wildcats. Dayton over Boston University would have been my pick. Colorado and Florida would have been a really tough matchup, but I would have gone with Florida because of that preseason expectation, and I think that Mike White's a good tournament coach. Butler and Texas would have been tough as well, but I would have gone with Butler and Kamar Baldwin. Maryland and Akron would have been another really close game because I really like this Akron team, but I would have gone with Maryland. Penn State and UCLA, even though I love this UCLA team, Penn State I think would have at least gotten one NCAA tournament win for Lamar Stevens. Can't let him go out empty-handed. Villanova and Hofstra would have been a matchup between Jay Wright and his old team, but I really like Jay Wright. I would have gone with Nova, even though this Hofstra team looked really good sometimes. West Virginia and Utah State would have been another tough matchup as well, but I really think Utah State would have won. I didn't like how West Virginia ended the season. Utah State looked really good in the Mountain West tournament, so I would have gone with them. And I would have had Florida State over Northern Kentucky. Then I would have had Gonzaga over NC Central. I would have taken LSU over Oklahoma because I liked the way they played on offense. A really close game would have been Michigan and Yale, but I would have gone with Michigan. I think that Xavier Simpson could have led them, and with Livers back, they're a better team. Oregon I would have had over New Mexico State, even though it would have been nice to see Oregon playing the Pac-12 tournament so I can get a better feel for what they were like without Duarte. I would have had BYU over Indiana because I like this BYU team, even though I was a little bit worried with how they played versus St. Mary's. I would have had Seton Hall over Eastern Washington because I think that Seton Hall looked really good at times this season, but if they would have had a different matchup, maybe I would have had them losing. Arizona and Texas Tech would be my favorite matchup of this entire bracket in the first round. This one's such a toss-up, but I would have gone Texas Tech. And then finally, San Diego State and UC Irvine. UC Irvine would have been a sleeper team, but San Diego State, I just highly doubt they were going to lose their first game. Baylor and Winthrop, I would have had Baylor. St. Mary's and Rutgers would have been a really tough call, but I would have gone with Rutgers because they haven't made it in forever. They played good defense, and I think that they could have got it done. Ohio State, Stephen F. Austin. If Stephen F. Austin played probably a worse team, I would have picked them, but Ohio State did look really good at times this season. I think they would have got it done. Louisville and Vermont. It didn't matter to me who Vermont was playing. I was picking them no matter what, and Louisville didn't look great this season sometimes, despite their preseason expectations, so I would have gone with Vermont. Virginia and Cincinnati. I can't go against Tony Bennett and the reigning national champions, so I would have had Virginia. Michigan State versus Bradley. I would have had Michigan State. Illinois and USC. Even though USC did look pretty good this year, I would have gone with Illinois. And Creighton and Little Rock. Without Zagorowski, or at least to hurt Zagorowski, Creighton probably wouldn't have been a team that would get upset early possibly, but Little Rock, I don't think they would have done it, so I would have had Creighton. Then moving on, I would have had Kansas over Houston. And then I would have taken Wisconsin over Liberty. I would have had Duke over East Tennessee State. And then I would have had Providence losing to Kentucky. Then between Dayton and Florida obviously ended Dayton's run to the Final Four in 2014. I don't think they would have done it this year though. I would have had Dayton winning this matchup. Butler and Maryland. This would have been a really tough call, but I really like Kamar Baldwin, so I would have had the Bulldogs advancing over Maryland. Penn State and Villanova. Another really tough call. I think that Villanova looked way too good sometimes this season to lose this early, so I would have had them at least getting to the Sweet 16. And then Utah State and Florida State. Florida State had a really deep bench. They're an NBA-like team. Heck, they've got 8 guys that can probably score 12 points a game, so I would have gone with the Seminoles. Then with Gonzaga and LSU, I would have had Gonzaga. Michigan and Oregon would have been a rematch from earlier in the season. This would have been a really tough call, but I think Michigan would have got their payback and would have won. BYU and Seton Hall would be a really good game, but I would take the Pirates. And then finally, my first big upset, I would have Texas Tech beating San Diego State. I think that whoever won that Arizona-Texas Tech matchup was probably going to beat them, so Texas Tech is my pick. Then with Baylor and Rutgers, I would have had Baylor winning this game, especially if MaCio Teague was healthy. With Ohio State and Vermont, I think Ohio State was way too good this season to lose early as well, and I also think they wouldn't have lost to Vermont. They just had way too much talent, especially if Kyle Young was back, so I would have gone with the Buckeyes. And then Virginia and Michigan State, I would have taken Michigan State. Sorry, Tony Bennett, but that's where your run ended. And then Creighton and Illinois, this would have been my other upset. I think Illinois would have beat Creighton, especially if Zagorowski was hurt. Who knows, but that's probably what I would have gone with. All right, so for the Sweet 16, Kansas and Wisconsin, this would have been a really good game. I'd have taken Kansas. And then Duke, Kentucky, this is a battle of the Blue Bloods. I would have taken Duke to beat Kentucky in this game. Then Dayton and Butler would have been really tough, probably a battle between two of my favorite programs. I would have taken the Flyers. And then Florida State and Villanova would have been really tough as well, but I probably would have gone with Florida State. Gonzaga versus Michigan, I think I would have taken Gonzaga in a really close game. And then another upset, I would have taken Texas Tech over Seton Hall. I feel like Chris Beard would have got things turned around in the Big 12 tournament, in my opinion. I thought that they were a really good defensive team. They didn't look great at times this year, but March, you never know. So this would have been my big upset pick. Then I would have taken Baylor over Ohio State, and I also would have taken Michigan State over Illinois. So now let's decide the Final Four. Kansas and Duke, probably the matchup of the tournament. This would have been a really tough call, but I would have gone with Kansas winning this game. And then with Dayton and Florida State, I think that this would have been a tough matchup for Dayton. Florida State's got a lot of size, and they got a lot of dudes that can score, but there was something about this Dayton Flyers team that I just can't go against. I would have had Dayton getting to the Final Four. Then Gonzaga and Texas Tech, a matchup of the Elite Eight last year, but this time I would have had Gonzaga beating Texas Tech and getting to the Final Four rather than what happened last year. And then to round out the Final Four, a battle between Baylor, a team I loved, and Michigan State. Cassius Winston, he was ready to go off this tournament. No pressure was on his back anymore, so I would have taken the Spartans to get to the Final Four. So my Final Four is Kansas, Dayton, Gonzaga, and Michigan State. 3 1 seeds and a 3 seed. I know, kind of chalky for this NCAA tournament because of how this whole season played out. And for my Final Four, I would have had Kansas beating Dayton in a rematch of the Maui Invitational. And then in an incredible semifinal game, I would have had Michigan State beating Gonzaga. So for my national championship, I would have had Kansas versus Michigan State. They didn't play at the beginning of the season in the Champions Classic. They didn't play in Maui, but in the national championship game, I thought this was the dream matchup for especially how the season played out. They were probably 2 of the best teams I've seen this year. Kansas looked like they were separating themselves from everybody else. Michigan State obviously was the preseason number 1. Didn't really live up to the expectations. They had a lot go on during their season, but I thought they were really rounding it out once the season winded down. So this would have been my matchup, Kansas versus Michigan State in a battle for the national championship, and my winner of the 2020 NCAA tournament would have been Kansas. I really would have liked to see Cassius Winston go out on top, but I thought that Kansas really separated themselves from everybody else. Marcus Garrett and Devon Dotson looked like the best backcourt in the nation, especially defending guard wise and a scoring guard. And with Azubuike, Kansas is basically unbeatable. That's who I would have thought won the NCAA tournament if it was played. Obviously, things didn't really work out that way. So now everybody can speculate who they thought would have won. This is just my personal pick. This is probably who I would have gone with if the bracket came out. So make sure you follow me down below on my Twitter to stay up to date with everything going on with the channel. And thank you for watching, because obviously I wish things could have ended differently, but obviously this is what we have to live with. So with that, this was the 2020 NCAA tournament according to Joe Lunardi, and obviously according to me. And this season really made me appreciate all of the beauty that is college basketball.